What a pleasure to be here with you today, and we will be talking about the spiritual approach on how to make right decisions. So as you can see here, what I put it up, I think it's very important that we think and compare a little bit what is being said nowadays. And Anita Kelly, it's a PhD and a professor at the University of Notre Dame. And she says that Americans average about 11 lies a week. So when we are lying all the time, it's not so easy to make right decisions or to others to make right decisions. And then another study, or researchers at University of Massachusetts, they say that 60% of those surveyed said they couldn't make through 10-minute conversation without lying. But here comes Mary Baker Eddy, a great woman and thinker of the 19th century, who really said that honesty is a spiritual power. And in that honesty, there is no lie. And dishonesty is human weakness, which forfeits divine help. So that's why it's so important to be honest, to say the truth, to think about the truth, and this is something that we are going to be talking today. And I hope after, about maybe 75 minutes that we are going to be spending together here discussing the subject, I hope you will have some clear steps on how to make right decisions on a spiritual basis. Making right decisions is really very important. It's very important for our health, and actually it helps us to maintain our emotional, our physical, and our mental health. And when I talked about that, when we lie or when we see people lying, sometimes we get nervous, sometimes we get agitated. But what we are going to be talking here about, I hope it will help you to stay calm, to find peace, and not to be irritated when we see comments that might not sound really true. When we make right decisions, we are also expressing dominion and freedom. And we are going to be talking about dominion and freedom from a spiritual perspective. But what is the basis for that? How can we truly make right decisions and have good mental, physical, and emotional health? So I will give you an example. When I love kids, and I'm so glad we have Elisha, right? Yes, we have Elisha here with us. Thank you for coming. So one Saturday afternoon, many years ago, I went with three nephews and two nieces to a very nice park. Actually, this park here in São Paulo, so I come originally from São Paulo. It's a park called Burle-Marx, tropical park, beautiful park. So as a tropical park with many flowers, birds, but also with a lot of insects. So I wasn't expecting them. So when I was with my nieces and nephews walking on the park, and then the little girls, 4 to 7, started saying, "Chia," Chia means auntie. "Chia, oh, those bugs are really biting our legs." At that moment, I really needed to make a decision. Would we spend our afternoon there with the bugs, within their legs, or should we go back home and not spend a nice afternoon in that park? I have been studying Christian Science since I was a child, so it's normal for me to pray. And pray is really to listen to God. I had just a few seconds and a few minutes there to be thinking what I could really answer to my nieces and nephews. So they were like your age, Elisha. And so it came to me that I could tell them, bugs are good. They have their place in the nature, and their place is certainly not in your legs. Exactly. The girls laugh, and we went on. We continue our park for 2 more hours. No more complaints about the bugs. What happened? Was that magic? Was that maybe a miracle, a coincidence? No, not at all. What I said was based on my knowledge of the spiritual laws that really govern the universe. The spiritual laws that are explained in a science, in a spiritual science which was discovered by Mary Baker Eddy and which she called Christian Science. And she explained the science in this book, Science and Health with Key to the Scriptures. But when we read this book, we really can understand the science that governs the whole universe, our lives and our bodies, in harmony. When we read the book along with the Bible, we actually develop a spiritual understanding of the universe, of ourselves, of our lives. And when we have that spiritual understanding, we are able to make simple decisions like that one that I just mentioned to you with my nieces and nephews in the park, or important decisions, such as for our health, or such as for political decisions, like we have to decide now in June 7th, you here in California, or on November for the whole country. Right decisions are very important for our well-being in all the way. So let's think a little bit about Mary Baker Eddy. And by learning more about her, we can really relate and see how the science came about. Mary Baker Eddy was a deeper student of the Bible. And by studying the Bible, she really discovered the essence of God. She discovered that the essence of God, the nature of God, is good, only good. That there is no evil or anything bad in God or created by God. And she also discovered scientific spiritual principles. We're talking about the science. A science teaches laws and principles that can be applied, and then we can have results. And those principles here are spiritual. But for us to understand that science, to understand those spiritual laws, Mary Baker Eddy also discovered that we need to educate and develop our spiritual sense. So, spiritual sense is not taught in school. Let's see. I know that he's a little bit busy there, but hi, I'm talking to you. Have you heard in school yet? I know. Are you in first grade or second grade? You're in second grade. Very good. So, you're in second grade. Have you heard about physical senses in school? That we can see, that we can hear. Have you heard that in school? No, not really. But I think the others have, right? When you were in school, we all heard about the 5 physical senses that we can see, hear, smell, taste, and touch. But in school, they don't teach the most important sense, and that is the spiritual sense. When we learn about the spiritual sense, we can see spiritually, we can hear spiritually, we can expect things spiritually. So, and I would like a volunteer. Do I have a volunteer, please? I would like someone to please read the definition that Mary Baker Eddy gave by spiritual sense. Can you please read here? Okay.
Conscious, constant capacity to understand God.
Very good. Thank you so much. That is the definition that Mary Baker Eddy gave to spiritual sense. Conscious. If it's a conscious capacity, can it be a capacity that is irrational? No, it's conscious. If it is constant, can we have this capacity today and not tomorrow? Exactly, we can't. It's constant, it's conscious. When we learn and develop that spiritual sense that nobody talks about, somebody might talk about intuition, but spiritual sense is much deeper than intuition. Because a spiritual sense, it's really that conscious, constant capacity to understand God. And when we understand God, we are able to make right decisions. We are able to apply what God is in our lives. And Mary Baker Eddy, as she studied the Bible, she really, as I mentioned to you a few seconds ago, she's discovered the true nature of God, the essence of God. So she discovered in the Bible that God is the source of intelligence, which means that God is mind, that God is the only intelligent mind. God is infinite love. God loves unconditionally and loves everyone without exception. God is eternal life. God has no beginning and no end, eternal life. And God is also principle, soul, spirit, and truth. All those names she found in the Bible. And the more we think about God on this way, the better we can understand God and live our lives based on those spiritual principles. When we learned about the spiritual sense, and when we develop that spiritual sense, we actually can think metaphysically. Okay, so sometimes this word is not very known or used by a lot of people, but let me think in here, because this word has actually two parts. Meta, and somebody knows the meaning of meta? Above or beyond. And physically, everything that has to do with the body and the senses and the physical senses. So for us to think metaphysically beyond the physical senses, we need to learn and develop our spiritual sense. It is natural. It's something that we all have. And when we do that, we can understand God in His true nature. We can start thinking, and a profound change can happen in the way we see things around us, in the way we see others, in the way we see ourselves. And when this profound change happens, healing happens, solutions come, and we are able to make right decisions, because we are able to see the spiritual reality, not the material reality. Not men or women who lie or who are dishonest, but men or women who really are honest in their spiritual nature, in their spiritual identity. Let us think a little bit about Mary Baker Eddy again, and why she was able to find all this in the Bible. Because nobody before her thought like that, the way she did it, based in the Bible. Mary Baker Eddy was born in the northeast of the United States, in Bow, a town in New Hampshire, and she came from a very, very religious family. So his father would read the Bible for everyone every day, and her mother would also many times read the Bible for herself. So what happened was that when Mary Baker Eddy was 8 years old, her mother read for her the story of Samuel. And she was one day all alone in her room. And then she remembered that story of Samuel. And she repeated the same words as Samuel. "Speak, Lord, for thy servant heareth." For me, that story is so important, and that part of her life is so important, because it shows why she opened her heart to obey God her whole life. Why she dedicated then later on her whole life to really awaken everyone's constant relationship with God. We do have that constant relationship with God. We don't need any intermediary, and we don't need to be somewhere else or in a place to feel the presence of God and to be one with God. And also, it explains to me why she was able to follow God's direction as Jesus did. And when we develop our spiritual sense, we are also able to make decisions as Jesus did, and to make right decisions even when we have to vote, because that is very important. Jesus had a lot of friends. He was teaching a long time. And people were following him, but they were afraid that they would be alone when Jesus would not be there. And Jesus said, "Don't worry, I will send you a comforter." So what is a comforter? What does a comforter?
Well,
Oh, a comforter is someone who comforts. Pardon me? Consoles, comforts, consoles. Pardon me? Exactly, calms you down. Take your worries away. And take anything that is bad away from you. And that is what the Spirit of God, that is what the Comforter is. The Comforter comforts us, consoles us, calms us down, and shows us the right directions to make right decisions. Mary Baker Eddy defines the Comforter as the divine expression that guides to the truth of God, of being, of existence, of creation, including man, including all of us, men, women, and kids. We are all ideas of God. And the Comforter is right here. And the Comforter is explained in Science and Health. We don't need to be waiting for the Comforter any longer. The Comforter is right here to comfort, to console, to calm our worries, not only for here, us in this room, but for everyone anywhere in the world and for all the politicians, so that they can also make right decisions and bring peace to the world. Christ Jesus, as the Bible said, he followed God's guidance. He loved God, we know that. But the Bible doesn't explain too much about Jesus when he was a kid, like Elisha, right? We don't know much about Jesus when he was as old as you are. But the Bible says that he grew with wisdom and grace. Who wants more wisdom? Who wants more grace? Isn't that important? Is it this important for our politicians today? Wisdom and grace. When we express grace, are we offending anyone? No, because grace means respect. Grace means love. It is right for us to expect from ourselves and to expect from our politicians to express more divine wisdom and divine grace. So Jesus studied the scriptures. Nowadays we call here the Bible, but we know that Jesus studied the scriptures. And in his time is what we call the Old Testament. Look, compare the Old Testament with the New Testament. Which one is bigger, Elisha? The scriptures, what we call today the Old Testament. Much longer, much bigger. Jesus knew that very well. And he knew it so well that he was called Rabbi or Master. And he was very well respected. He was a revolutionary thinker. And he started his healing ministry when he was 30. And he healed all kinds of diseases, all kinds of situations. Jesus really loved God. Jesus healed and multiplied the loaves and fishes. And let's think a little bit about that. I don't know if you have heard this in Sunday school. Do you go to Sunday school sometimes? Yeah? Maybe you have heard of that story, that there were a lot of people, 5,000 men once, another time 4,000 men, plus women and plus kids. And Jesus had just a little bit of loaves and a little bit of fishes. So when he called a kid had that for him. And what happened was that Jesus said, okay, let's feed this whole multitude. They all ate, and baskets were taken after that. Another time he had to pay taxes. Who pays taxes here? We all have to pay taxes, right? Jesus too. Yes, Jesus had to pay taxes, and not only for him, but for Peter too. So he said, Peter was a good fisher, and he said, Peter, go there and fish, and when you get a fish, open the mouth, find the coin, and with that coin, you are going to pay your taxes and my taxes. If we hear this today, would we do it? But Peter did. Peter had no doubt that it was possible. Peter trusted Jesus with no fear and no doubt. There he went. He got the fish. There was a coin. He paid the taxes. But what enabled Peter to do that? Was it really Peter? No, it was not. Actually, it was possible because of the knowledge that Jesus had of the spiritual reality, the law that he knew about demand and supply. If there is a demand, there is a divine, a spiritual law of supply. We are not here to be in lack of anything, because God supplies everything. And we can apply this law of demand and supply for us here, for our government, and for all governments. Christians, and Mary Baker, I love the way that Mary Baker really explains that, because for me is an explanation why is this possible for us today, or something similar. I would like another volunteer, and I think he said he was going to read, so where is the mic? The mic is coming. Would you like to read now? Yes, so she's bringing the mic to you.
We must look deep into realism instead of accepting only the outward sense of things.
Thank you so much. What a beautiful voice. So, we need to look deep into realism. What realism is that? A realism that everybody's lying nowadays? No, not that kind of realism. Which realism is that? Exactly. Spiritual realism. Why are we able to look deep into this spiritual realism? Because of what? Because of our spiritual sense, exactly. And when we do that, when we look deep into realism, we are not going to accept only the outward sense of things. We're not going to accept violence or dishonesty or lack of any sort. When we look deep into realism, we see that spiritual reality is harmonious, is good, is for everyone, it's in action right here, right now, and we can expect it. So Mary Baker Eddy knew how to look deep into realism. She was even learning when she was, as I mentioned, a small child, when she was a young adult, a teenager, an adolescent, but she had a very poor health when she was a child. You know, Elisha, she was like you, and many times she couldn't go to school. Do you go to school every day? But imagine, Mary Baker Eddy, when she was as old as you, a little bit older, and a teenager, she couldn't go every day because she was ill. She needed to be at home. But her brother was a wonderful brother, and he gave her lots of books to read. So she spent a lot of her time reading books, writing, and listening to God, and also reading the Bible. And what was also wonderful is that when her brother Albert gave her books of great philosophers, even from a young age she read them. And her brother also taught her some Hebrew, some Greek, and some Latin. And when we study those languages, we can really go to the original of the words, to the true meaning of the words, not the meaning that, came through the ears. And that was very good and very important for her. And she read so much, she was so well informed, and wanted to know so many things that were going on around the world. Actually, once she even said, I am praying, and someone in Africa is benefiting from my prayer, something like that. I'm not quoting her. But in that sense, that even on the 19th century, she had that love for the world and for what was happening. And she really achieved great, great things. But she had an inspiration and a spiritual understanding that expanded her vision and helps us today to also to expand our vision from a mortal sense of existence to an eternal and immortal sense of existence, to expand our view of a materialistic view of reality. Because, you know, the TV, the radio, the newspaper, they show us a lot of times just a mortal reality, a bad one. But we can expand our view, thanks to Mary Baker Eddy, from that materialistic view of reality to an unlimited view of a spiritual reality, which is always good, always healthy, always nice. Because Mary Baker Eddy was sick through so many years during her childhood, adolescence, and young adulthood, she searched a lot of healing methods during her time, including homeopathy, hydropathy, but she didn't find a connection to God. She had a scientific mind, but she was always looking for something that could connect health to God, something that could explain that health is natural. And when she studied the scriptures, she really understood the spiritual existence and the spiritual reality of our existence. So that's why we are talking about metaphysics here, because it's really beyond the physical senses. And Mary Baker Eddy understood the true man as God's ideas. We all, adults, kids, women, we are all really expressing God and feeling and expressing the true man as God's idea. The Bible says that we are the image and likeness of God, and that we have dominion. But sometimes to be thinking about the image and likeness, it's a little bit difficult. Because what is that? It sounds a little bit abstract, don't you think? Do you know what an image is? So when you think about image, what do you think? What comes to your thought? Reflection. When we see a reflection, we see what? We think of what?
Form.
Pardon me?
Form.
Forum, okay.
Mirror.
Pardon me? A mirror, okay, thank you. So, very good. Let's think of a mirror here. So, if you look here, what do you see?
Myself.
You see yourself.
Yeah.
Can you see something else?
The person behind me, but not.
Okay, but if it's so close, you can see only yourself, right? Exactly. But tell me something. Can this image be different than you?
No.
An image is always exactly as the original, right? But sometimes when we keep looking at the mirror so much, we really think, oh, maybe I am too fat. Maybe I am too thin. Oh, I'm getting older. Oh, I have some white hair, right? Have you heard that story? Or ever thought about it? So instead of that, maybe we can start looking at the mirror in a different way to understand why we are the image and likeness of God. Let's see. You know how to read, right? So what can you read here? Can you read one sentence for me? I'm good. Very good. When we look at the mirror, when you look at the mirror next time, you can always think, okay, I am good. What about you?
I'm healthy.
Oh, you're healthy. Very good. What about you? What can you read here?
I'm organized.
You're organized. Aha, very good. What about you, Amy?
I can have a balanced life.
I can have a balanced life. You see, when we think like that, when we look at the mirror, instead of thinking of a human figure, we can be thinking of qualities. And we can be thinking, yes, I am healthy, I am good, I'm intelligent, I am organized, I can have a balanced life, knowing that the source of that is God. So we are looking then at God constantly as the source of all our qualities. And we are affirming who we are as the image and likeness of God, not as a human figure. And then the Bible also says that we have dominion. What is dominion? Control. Very good. If you go to the dictionary, we will find control, self-control. But for me, real spiritual dominion is much more than a human will or self-control. Dominion as the authority over and ownership of your thoughts and actions. You have the authority of the Christ over what you think and over what you say. You do have that authority of the Christ, which is the presence of God, which is all the thoughts that come from God talking constantly to us. And when we have dominion, this kind of dominion, we are able to make right decisions. We are able to either find the right candidate and vote for the right candidate, or if the candidate that we choose is not elected, because we have that authority of our thoughts and actions, we're not going to criticize, we're not going to be bothered by it, because the Comforter is calming us down. And I can tell you by experience, because this current president that Barry mentioned at the beginning from Brazil, who now is impeached, she was not my candidate. But through this now 6 years that she has been president, I have prayed for government. And that is what is important for us. We're not praying or thinking about a person, but we are praying and supporting the right government. We are expecting honesty in government. We are expecting wisdom and grace, exactly, as Jesus. Wisdom and grace, that's very important. So everything that I'm talking here and saying is based on Christian Science. So I would like to tell you a little story about myself when I was 12 years old and when I met Christian Science. I was invited to go to a Christian Science Sunday school, and there I went. And when I got there, the Sunday school, the teacher gave me those two books, Science and Health and the Bible. And he gave me also another book, booklet or publication called the Christian Science Bible Lessons. And he told me how I could read the Bible and Science and Health every day. I loved to read. I was very obedient, and I am still. So I read and I studied every day. And I needed that so much because my father was mentally ill and he was at home. And my mother had already passed on when I was 10. And it was very difficult. My siblings are much older than me, so I was during the day all by myself with my father and someone who was helping us at home. But at one point, it was so difficult to keep him home safe that the four siblings, took him to a hospital, and some doctors made exams to him and said that he needed to go to a mental institution because he had an incurable mental condition. And that institution, it was not so far away from where we were living. And my father went, but I continued studying those two books, the Bible and Science and Health, every day. And those books talk a lot about the word man or spiritual idea. And every time I had a notebook, and I would make notes and think about my father, thinking about myself, as I showed to you. Seeing him perfect, well, as the image and likeness of God, but seeing him good and healthy. Even when I went to that hospital to visit him on Saturdays or during the week sometimes, I just saw my father as perfect, with that childlike love. And I'm so happy to tell you that about 3 months later, he left the hospital completely healed and left for more than 20 years after that. Praise God. Yes, it was really the work of God, because medicine could not explain that. So in my prayer, in my conversations with God, and through my study, all that helped me to have the expectation of healing. And when we have that expectation without doubt, like Peter didn't doubt Jesus, we can see healing, even in government, even in our own family, even with ourselves. And since I've been reading about Mary Baker Eddy, her life really is an inspiration for me, and I have learned a lot from her and from her life. She overcame great challenges in her life, and she discovered the science of Christianity, and she enabled all of us today to see the spiritual reality of existence, the spiritual reality of we as spiritual ideas of God. She had her own healings. She was healed of a chronic indigestion, a problem of indigestion. It was chronic. She was never able to get healing elsewhere. But when she discovered Christian Science, she was completely healed. And she healed for over 40 years. And this book here, Mary Baker Eddy, Christian Healer, if you haven't read this book, I really recommend it. It's a wonderful, inspiring book. And all the healings that are here were verified and documented. So, and it's really a compilation of 40 years of healing work that she did. If you don't have this book, but you want to see one of her instantaneous healings, on page 184 of Science and Health, there is an instantaneous healing of tuberculosis that she also performed. Mary Baker Eddy discovered the science of metaphysics in 1866 when she was going through a real fatal life challenge. And she developed the spiritual sense. She discovered spiritual sense, educated and developed. And with that spiritual sense, she was able to see the spiritual reality of health in her and in others. And she also saw that spiritual reality is peaceful. We don't need to be in war. We don't need to be in arguments. The spiritual reality is harmonious and peaceful. And talking about war, she wrote a very short 3-paragraph thoughts of war, and I would like to read this for you. It was published on the April 11th, 1908 issue of the Christian Science Sentinel, one of the Christian Science publications. And it says, "For many years I have prepared daily that there be no more war. I have prayed daily that there be no more war, no more barbarous slaughtering of our fellow beings. Prayed that all the peoples on earth and the islands of the sea have one God, one mind, love God supremely, and love their neighbor as themselves. National disagreements can be and should be arbitrated wisely, fairly, and fully settled. And it is unquestionable, however, that at this hour the armament of navies is necessary for the purpose of preventing war and preserving peace among nations." Mary Baker Eddy was a woman who lived through the Civil War. So she knew, that's why she's referring that she prayed daily for peace. And that sentinel was sent to President Theodore Roosevelt. And when he read that, when he read those 3 paragraphs about war, he said this about Mary Baker Eddy: "I wish that all other religious leaders showed as much good sense." Can we have good sense today? Yes. We can. We need good sense to stop war, to bring peace to debates, to bring peace to the political scenario here and elsewhere in other countries, in the world. Peace and honesty are so important nowadays in world politics. And we all can contribute it for it, as Mary Baker Eddy did, as Theodore Roosevelt acknowledged. But, okay, I'm talking so long here, and you may be asking, okay, Leide, you are talking so much, what does this have to do with making right decisions, right? Okay, because of that, I would like to share with you a 3-step plan for you to make right decisions. So, the first step is that you can and should be thinking metaphysically. when you think metaphysically, you use your spiritual sense. Don't use a logic that is just in your brain or the logic that you read in other newspapers. Think metaphysically and use your spiritual sense. The second step is see the spiritual reality as supreme. In the spiritual reality, are people liars? No. In spiritual reality, are politicians dishonest? No. In Brazil, as some of you might have heard, more than 50% of the Congress has done something illegal, is involved with some dishonest thing or corruption. But we can see the spiritual reality as supreme, and we can also claim and expect justice. Because justice is divine, and human laws can just mirror spiritual justice. We can also, the third step is to exercise your God's given dominion. Remember what was dominion? Our spiritual authority. Our spiritual authority over our thinking and actions. So when you exercise your God's given dominion, you can do and make decisions peacefully and wisely. And make right decisions is also very important. And it's essential, I would say, to overcome abusive relationships, whatever those relationships are, or to overcome addiction, violence, or sickness. And when we study the letter, the Holy Bible, the Word of God, when we study the Bible in science and health, it's really not enough just to learn a lot of things by memory. Because it's good to learn things by memory. But if we learn a whole page, two, or the whole book by memory and just repeat it, it's not going to bring healing. What brings healing and change is when we study the letter thoroughly, but imbibe the Spirit. When we imbibe the spirit of love, the spirit of mind as intelligence, the spirit of love as unconditional love, and when we imbibe the spirit of principle with justice. So it is important to study the letter thoroughly, but to imbibe the Spirit. And when we align our thoughts and our actions, first our thoughts, when we align our thoughts with divine mind, we are able to take the right step. We're able to make right decisions in whatever might be what we need to do in our lives. But it's good that you remember, please, your spiritual identity. And remember that as when I was showing the mirror to you, an image is never different from the original. So when you think of yourself as idea of God, you cannot be different than God. When we think about our politicians, the only way for us to help our politics to be better is to see that our politicians also are the image and likeness of God, and see the spiritual reality of them, not what they're only saying or doing, but really seeing it through with our spiritual sense. I would like to have two analogies here to talk a little bit more about it. So do you have your ID with you? Do you carry your ID all the time? I do too. So mine is from Massachusetts, yours probably is from California, right? So what is on a spiritual ID? What do you see? The picture of yourself. Good. What else?
Birthday.
The birth date.
Height, weight.
Pardon me? Height and weight. Address.
Hair color.
Pardon me?
Hair color.
Oh, hair color. Okay. But all those things. But I would like to invite you to be thinking about your spiritual identity. And to maybe think and have a card on your phone or somewhere that you can come and think about your spiritual identity. It's interesting because our true identity is spiritual. What is our address? spiritually speaking? The kingdom of heaven, right? What is our name, spiritually speaking? God's child. And name really means nature, right? And I think you said something beautiful about name yesterday, right? What was it? Can you?
Expressing the divine.
In Hebrew, right? So she told me yesterday that the word name in Hebrew means expressing the divine. Isn't that beautiful? Let us be thinking about our true name, expressing the divine. Thank you so much. And our address, we have seen that it's the kingdom of heaven. What about our birth date? Our birthday? Eternal, exactly. We were never born. We will never die. That is our spiritual identity. So make a note of it and think where you can have your spiritual identity in a place that you can always look for it and remind yourself about your spiritual identity. Now, who can please tell me if this is a real $100 bill or not?
It looks real.
It looks real? Yeah. How do you know? Why it's not a counterfeit? Thank you. Who is the one who can really tell us if it's a real one or a counterfeit? The bank. Why?
You claim it.
You claim it?
They know the real.
They know the real, exactly. When we go to the bank, pardon me? It has a number in it also. Those who know the real, who have been trained, those who are experts, know if it's right, if it's real or not. And what does this have to do with us? Because I would like you to think that we all can become experts. We all can know the real, the spiritual reality. And when we know the spiritual reality, when we become Christian Science metaphysicians, we know what is real. We know the spiritual reality. And we don't get the counterfeit. We don't take the counterfeit, we don't use the counterfeit, we don't talk about the counterfeit. So think about that. When we use our spiritual sense, oh, and by the way, this is a real one, okay? But back to our spiritual sense. When we use our spiritual sense, this spiritual sense guides us to live in a wiser, more loving, and healthier way. When we live wiser, we make wise decisions and right decisions. This will be very helpful for you now on June 7th and on November 8th, for all of us as Americans, and for the whole world, because the whole world is watching us. And in Africa, exactly. And Brazil nowadays too. So it is important. This is very serious. And that's why we are here today. Because it is an important step, and each one of us has part on it. If we want to defeat dishonesty, where does it start? With us. If we want to have a more peaceful world, where does it start? With us, with each one of us. Each one of us is part in this world and have a lot to contribute. And you can think that your prayers, that our prayers, can have a ripple effect, which means that can bless more and more and more. So we need to feel the presence of God when we are making decisions and know that God is divine mind, infinite mind, always intelligent. And we can see ourselves and our candidates as one with God. Even when it shows that it's not. With spiritual sense, we see metaphysically. We see beyond the physics. So we are able to see that. We can establish our lives under moral and spiritual principles. When we establish our own lives under moral principles, we are helping the whole country, the whole community, the whole world. And what enables us to do that is the Christ, the healing presence of God. And when we feel the Christ, we feel inner peace. And when we feel inner peace, we are able to make right decisions. I never make a decision without feeling at peace. I pray, which means I listen to God, and I make my decision only when I feel at peace. As I mentioned before, everything that I'm saying here is based on my studies of Christian Science. So I just would like to mention that Christian Science is scientific because it's a science that explains the divine laws of God, the divine laws of creation, and it's Bible-based. It's totally based on the Bible. Christian Science teaches our spiritual freedom, teaches the reality of mind, of divine mind. Christian Science contributes to a wiser, more balanced, and healthier society. When she read that, I have a balanced life, this is something that we all can claim, that we have the right to live a balanced life, a wiser life. All of us, including our politicians. Christian Science shows a higher source of happiness. Our happiness does not depend from people, does not depend from who is in government. Our happiness, our tranquility, our calmness does not depend on others. And we don't need to feel any kind of peer pressure. You know, teenagers talk a lot about peer pressures, but how many of us maybe have been in circles of friends and they started criticizing, and out of a sudden, we are criticizing too. Has anybody ever felt that? So, but when we are aware of that spiritual sense of our connection with God, we can be free from that. We don't need to buy into that or to criticize others, because criticism doesn't help. Criticism doesn't heal. We don't need drugs, we don't need alcohol, we don't need any bad habits to be happy or to get respect from others. And we can be free of those bad habits. And I would like to give you another example. When I was 21 years old, I was living in London, and I was a student at that time. I was learning English, and one night I was with several Brazilian friends, and we were in a circle. And they were older than me. They were already either studying or working. And then, out of a sudden, a guy there took something from his pocket, take another green thing, put it there, roll it up. Soon I realized, oh, this must be marijuana, or a pot. So he put it on his mouth, lit it up, and gave to people, to the person around him, next to him, and so forth. When it came to me, I just took it and gave it over to the next person. And then everybody started asking, Leide, are you not going to try? It's good. You're going to feel lighter. You're going to feel happier. And I said, I don't need it. I'm already happy. And they all wondered why I didn't like that or didn't want it. And how happy am I that on that day I really made the right decision. I was already happy and relaxed, and I didn't accept it. I was able to explain them why not. And that helped me to say no and to exercise my God-given dominion on that occasion and in others. I am very happy that I was able to do something that was moral, because morality helps us. Morality is important. So, but if you know someone who has done something wrong, who has had a bad experience in the past, it's not a problem. We can forgive ourselves and we can forgive others. And forgiveness is so important. Forgiveness helps us to move forward. And forgiveness blesses us and blesses others. Forgiveness is very important for healing. When we forgive, we don't feel ourselves as victims. And we don't see others as victims. And when we study Christian Science and those laws of reality, of spiritual reality, we have really a higher view of life. And then we find solutions to our problems. The spiritual understanding of those spiritual laws explained in Science and Health and based on the Bible actually empowered us. It empowers us to exercise our God-given dominion through the Christ, the presence of God. So I would like to tell you briefly about an experience that I had when I was living in Germany. As you heard at the beginning, I had my language institute for about 10 years. But then I decided to live in in Germany for a while, in Munich, to study. And I left everything organized in my office. But then I got a call from my assistant saying that the person responsible for the finances was saying that the financial situation of the business was bad, that we didn't have money, we wouldn't have money to pay the teachers, and I had more than 30 teachers. And the situation was so bad that I really thought, may I go back, should I go back to Brazil? Need I be there and think about it and solve it there? But then I went home and I got my Bible. And I opened the Bible, and I opened in Genesis. And I opened and I started reading the story of Joseph. But Joseph, the son of Jacob, I'm sorry. When I started reading that story of Joseph, it was very important to me. But what part that was really important, Joseph was a slave, and one day he was the slave of Potiphar, and he grew up and he became a very nice, good-looking man. And he was alone. Potiphar was away, and he was alone with Potiphar's wife. And what happens is that at that time, clothes were not like ours today, right? They were just like something around us. And what happened was that she really grabbed him and said, "Come and sleep with me." But Joseph had a very good sense of morality, and he was trustworthy. He knew God. He knew that this was wrong, and he left. He ran. But when he did that, what had Potiphar's wife in her hands? His clothes. Okay, so, and I think she was really mad that he didn't do what she asked him to, because he was a slave. He shouldn't, follow orders. That was an order. So when her husband came, she told him a completely different story, and Joseph went to prison. But for me, when I read that story, I didn't feel that Joseph felt like a victim. He still continued to help others. He continued to do good, but he was there for 2 years. Only after that, after 2 years, somebody remembered him that, he could interpret I see you knocking. You know the story, right? Yes, somebody recommended him to Pharaoh, and then he interpreted the dream of the Pharaoh. And that made him free, and then he was successful again. But for me, the important story, the important part, was that when I was reading and saw Joseph there in front of Potiphar's wife, I had a feeling that he was afraid. And that's why he ran. That was what came to me. And I thought, I cannot be afraid. I cannot be afraid of not having enough supply. I cannot be afraid of what I am hearing. And so, even there in Germany, I started knowing the spiritual reality of my business. I started thinking about the spiritual reality and that spiritual law of demand and supply, when God really supplies everything. So to make a long story short, a few days later or a few weeks later, the woman who was in charge of the business decided to leave, and I was able to manage from Germany, and supply came and peace came. When we see the spiritual reality, everything is possible. We can demonstrate that. And what I've learned really is that we should never make a decision based on fear. Even if we have just seconds, we should not make a decision based on fear, only on spiritual laws. Jesus had to make lots of decisions. And we learned a lot from Jesus because he is our way shower. So when he was once in the desert, after he was 40 days and 40 nights in the desert, he left the desert and he was hungry. And he saw some stones on the ground. He was hungry. We don't know exactly what happened. Maybe he thought, maybe it was a mirage. He thought it was bread. We don't know. But he probably was about to eat that. But then, really, he had a good thought that prevented him to do that. He knew that we, not only by bread, should man live. So for me, what that means is that Jesus could really demonstrate the spiritual reality of nourishment. And he had control over his body, over his thoughts, and over his actions. So then he had a second temptation. In that second temptation, he was really looking everything, right? And he went to a very tall place. And look, a temptation came to him that maybe he could just jump. And maybe God would send angels to carry him. A temptation came to him with a verse from 91st Psalm. So when temptations come to you, please pay attention. Is that really from God, that what you're hearing? Or is really just a temptation? So for me, at that moment, Jesus knew that only good thoughts come from God. That we don't need to tempt God or to do things that are irresponsible. We can only follow God's thoughts. And the third temptation was that Jesus saw everything, and then it came to him, oh, maybe I could have everything. What about today? So do you think that sometimes people want to have lots of material things, a lot of power in politics or in private business? But what stopped Jesus was his understanding that he was here to glorify God. And his mission was really not for his personal glory, just to glorify God. So I think that really those examples of Jesus' teachings shed light on us, on our lives today, how we can live better, how we can make right decisions. And I like to think that we are safe. We're always safe when we see the spiritual reality. And if you think of the word safe, you can think of salvation and of health. And why? Because in Latin, the word salvus means whole, safe, health, and injured. Uninjured, yes, exactly. So it is interesting that being safe, healthy, or healing even, is really to be safe and whole. And then we have some Hebrew here. So can you pronounce the word for us? Shalva?
Yes.
Yes, shalva. And shalva means peace, right? Quiet or easy. And it has also a similar root. You see here? We can all be at peace. Christian Science, everything that I'm talking to you here today, is much more than positive thinking. We cannot compare with positive thinking because Christian Science is completely based on the Bible and not positive thinking. Christian Science gives us a 360 perspective on life and on spiritual reality. Christian Science doesn't prohibit, doesn't judge, doesn't condemn. Christian Science frees us. And Christian Science doesn't ignore problems or illnesses. Christian Science heals them. The spiritual understanding brings healing. And an example of a healing, as you've heard, I am a Christian Science practitioner, which means that I help people through prayer. One night I got a call around 10 p.m. in the night of a woman who was going to the hospital because she was on her last month of pregnancy. And for a week she hadn't felt the baby moving. Do we have mothers here? Is this a good sign? It's not a good sign, right? So she got to the hospital, and the doctor there made a few tests, and no movement whatsoever. So then he said, we need to have a cesarean. He performed the cesarean. And by the way, I asked the woman, okay, call me every 20 minutes. I will be praying and I want you to know what is happening. So we prayed, and then when she went to the cesarean, her mom was there, and then I asked her mom to keep calling me. So her mom was calling me, and we were praying. So a baby girl was born. It was, but the doctor said her level of her blood level is so low. We need to do a blood transfusion immediately. So they did. And we continue praying and knowing that the spiritual reality of life, the spiritual reality of existence. And after that, the blood level continued to sink. So the doctor said, there is nothing that we can do. The girl might have a few hours or a day or so to live. So medicine gave up. But the mother, the grandmother, and myself, we didn't give up. We continue praying and we continue knowing the spiritual reality of life, of eternal life, that has no beginning and no end, just life. And the blood level started normalizing. 10 days later, she went home. And 1 year later, that same hospital organized a little party for babies who were born a year before. And when the doctor saw the mom with the baby on her arm, said, "Oh, the miracle baby." So medicine could not explain what happened, but we knew what happened. The knowledge of a spiritual reality, the knowledge of knowing the unreality of death and only the reality of life brought healing. And we made the right decision at that time to accept the expression of life, only the expression of life. So Christian Science, as I mentioned, gives us really a higher sense of life, of existence. And the spiritual understanding that Christian Science gives us, when we have that spiritual understanding, we can overcome health problems or relationship problems or all kinds of problems or challenges. Even injustices. Mary Baker Eddy had to overcome some injustice in 1907 when she went through a suit that was called Next Friends, when her own son and some other close friends wanted to take over her assets and the business that she had. But she was able to prove that she was capable of doing, because Mary Baker Eddy knew the spiritual reality of existence, of justice, and knew that God's law is supreme, and God knows what is right. We don't need to doubt what comes from God. And during her time, actually at the late 19th century, beginning of 20th century, there was here in the United States what was called yellow journalism. So, which means kind of the sensationalism journalism that we see today. And there were a lot of lies about Mary Baker Eddy going around. And she prayed. I think through her biographies, I think she really knew that criticism and lies don't help. So she prayed to God. She prayed to really feel an inspiration for God in a solution. And it came to her to really found the Christian Science Monitor. And for me, the Christian Science Monitor really looked deep into realism to find good. And if you are or are not familiar with this magazine, the Christian Science Journal, the June edition has a very nice interview with the editor of the Christian Science Monitor. And it's beautiful here what Mary Baker Eddy wrote about the Christian Science Monitor, that really the purpose and objective of the monitor is to spread undivided the science or the laws of God that operates unspent, and to injure no man, but to bless all mankind. So for me, I have no doubt that really the monitor looked deep into realism and reports on the good. So Mary Baker Eddy had a lot of contributions, and she helped her community in New Hampshire. But for me, the greatest contribution that she had was to write Science and Health, which really shows us our spiritual freedom our spiritual sense and how we can develop our spiritual sense. Science and Health shows the spiritual and metaphysical view of the Bible and gives a new perspective of life. And Science and Health teaches us really about our spiritual freedom, which means that we can reject whatever is bad, whatever is wrong, whatever is dishonest. We don't need to buy into that. We can really always have the spiritual reality and see metaphysically. So, how can we make right decisions? Again, a little summary for you. Please know your divine right. It is your divine right to make right decisions today and always. Trust your God-given authority, the authority of the Christ. And don't doubt your authority. Don't doubt your capacity to listen to the Christ. Please don't let a counterfeit fool you. A dishonest man, a disorganized government, or bad politics, that's just a counterfeit of the real government of God. And we all have our role into bringing honesty and justice to our governments here and in the world. And we are all spiritually innocent. Nobody is faulty or has any fault in wrong thinking, in wrong thinking and wrongdoing spiritually. We are all spiritually innocent. And only when we see metaphysically to see the spiritual innocence of man, the man and women created by God, we are able to bring healing and to bring solutions. And God forgives and loves unconditionally. And I love what Mary Baker Eddy says. She says, divine love corrects and governs. Not man, not women, not ourselves. Divine love corrects and governs. And as a little summary, we saw the story of Joseph, who exercised his spiritual sense and was able to help even when he was in prison, and he succeeded. We saw that Jesus was able to overcome his temptations, and he is our way shower. We are able to overcome our temptations as well. And we saw that Mary Baker Eddy discovered the science of Christianity, which is really the comforter. Mary Baker Eddy teaches us in Science and Health the spiritual sense that we can educate and develop, and then we can see spiritually. And we can, today and always, we are able to see the spiritual reality of life, of existence, and of health. We deserve to be healthy. We deserve to have a normal, healthy life. And now, guess what? Now is your turn, please. You need to go out, or you don't need to go out, right here, right now. You can start applying what we've heard. You can start really educating and developing your spiritual sense. And when you do that, you are able to see the spiritual reality of life, of existence, of health, and in this way, you can really contribute for a better government and for a better world. Thank you so much for spending this time with me today. It was a pleasure to be with you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.